Right now, there's a song somewhere on your phone that does something none of your other songs do. You know the exact second it happens, down to the syllable. A voice climbs into a note it shouldn't be able to reach. A chorus drops out to almost nothing, then crashes back in a half beat late. Cold rises up the back of your neck. Your chest tightens for a second, the way it might right before someone hands you bad news or good news. You can't quite tell which. The hair on your arm stands straight up on its own, without asking your permission. You call it chills. Scientists have their own word for it, borrowed from French, frisson, meaning a shiver. But have you ever actually stopped to wonder what that word is hiding? Most people never do. You've probably decided it's just a weird body glitch, a shiver with no real meaning behind it, gone in a few seconds and forgotten. But the real answer is far stranger than a glitch. It is not random. It is not decoration. It is an ancient survival system, hundreds of thousands of years old, misfiring inside a body that has no idea it's currently sitting in traffic listening to a pop song. So why would a chord change carry enough power to trip a reflex built for actual danger? Start with the hair itself. Watch a startled cat sometime, and you'll see its fur stand straight up along its spine in an instant. Your body still runs the exact same program. Every time your skin prickles into goosebumps, a tiny muscle at the base of each hair follicle contracts and yanks the hair upright. That muscle has a name. It's called the erector pili, and it has been doing this exact job since long before modern humans existed. In a body covered in thick fur, standing the hair on end trapped a layer of warm air against the skin on a cold night, or made a frightened animal look larger and more dangerous to a predator deciding whether or not to attack. You lost the fur a long time ago. The muscle never got the memo. It doesn't only fire for music either. A speech that suddenly says the thing you needed to hear. The last scene of a film, standing at the edge of a canyon and finally understanding how small you are. All of it runs through the same ancient wiring. If the fur is gone, why does the reflex still fire? Because nobody ever told the muscle to stop. It still activates exactly the way it did on a cold night on the open grassland, except the trigger isn't wind anymore, and it isn't a predator either. Now the trigger is a bridge, or a key change, or a human voice pushed just past its comfortable range. In 2011, a research team at the Montreal Neurological Institute, led by neuroscientist Robert Zatorre and graduate researcher Valerie Salimpour, decided to find out exactly what was happening inside a brain at that moment. They didn't just watch which regions lit up. They used a radioactive tracer and a scanner to measure actual dopamine being released in real time, the same method used to study food, drugs, and the other rewards a body treats as essential. They played people music chosen specifically because it reliably gave them chills, and they watched the chemistry unfold. Dopamine flooded the striatum, the same deep reward circuitry that fires for food, for sex, for anything the ancient brain has decided is worth chasing and repeating. But why would that reward arrive in two separate waves instead of one clean payoff? One part of the striatum activated early in anticipation, right before the chill-inducing moment arrived, as if the brain had somehow already predicted what was coming and started celebrating early. A different part activated later, at the peak itself, in the exact instant the goosebumps appeared. Your brain, in other words, rewarded you twice for the same 4 seconds of music. Once, for expecting the moment. Once, for receiving it. The same lab later ran a version of this test with actual money on the table. Volunteers were given cash and the chance to buy songs they had never heard before, and the strength of the connection between that reward circuitry and the hearing centers of the brain predicted how much they were willing to spend. Your brain, in effect, was pricing the chill before your wallet ever came out. That alone would be strange enough. It gets stranger. Psychologist Jaak Panksepp spent years studying exactly which sounds trigger a chill, and he noticed something specific about the moments that worked. They were rarely random musical flourishes. They tended to be swelling vocals, sudden rises in pitch, long-held high notes, the kind of sound a singer strains to reach. That range, he pointed out, sits almost exactly inside the frequency of a human infant crying for its mother. Could a song really be tricking your brain into thinking a child is in danger? Panksepp thought so. He proposed that a chill isn't a music reflex at all. It's a parenting reflex, a separation distress alarm wired into you before you could even speak, built to make a parent drop everything and run toward a child in trouble. A soaring chorus, in his theory, sits close enough to that ancient cry that your body responds as if someone you love might need you right now. You are not moved by the melody itself in this theory. You are moved by an alarm that has mistaken a singer for a crying child. Is that why sad songs tend to hit harder than happy ones? It fits a pattern researchers have documented for decades. Slower, minor key, aching songs produce more reported chills than upbeat ones. A familiar song produces more than a stranger's. Women report the reaction somewhat more often than men, which lines up uncomfortably well with a theory built around an ancient caregiving alarm. Later researchers decided to test Panksepp's theory directly. They played listeners' actual recordings of real infant cries alongside cry-like passages of music, expecting the genuine cries to win, to be the sharper, more powerful trigger. They weren't. The music won. Whatever is happening in your chest during that chorus, it isn't a simple, literal mimicry of a baby's voice fooling your ears. It looks more like an old alarm system that music has learned to reach through a side door nobody planned for, borrowing one raw ingredient, that specific cry-like frequency, without needing any of the other ingredients to match. Not everyone feels any of this, though, and that fact turns out to matter more than it first appears. Only around 2 out of every 3 people reliably get chills from music at all. The rest can sit through the exact same swelling chorus, the same key change, and feel absolutely nothing. Why would the same 4 seconds of sound reach one person and pass straight through another? For years, nobody knew. Then researchers Psychologist and her colleagues put both groups into a brain scanner and looked not at brain activity this time, but at brain wiring itself. What they found was structural, physically built into the tissue. People who reliably get chills have measurably thicker, denser connections between the auditory cortex, the part of the brain that processes sound, and the regions that handle emotion and social meaning. People who don't get chills have that exact same pathway. It's simply thinner, quieter, less able to let one part of the brain reach the other. You're not broken if a song has never once given you goosebumps. Your wiring is only routed differently, and you didn't choose that wiring any more than you chose your height. Even if you're one of the lucky 2 out of 3, the same song won't do it forever. Play it enough times and the chill fades, sometimes for months, sometimes for good, even though nothing about the recording has changed. An alarm that fires at every single familiar sound isn't an alarm anymore. It's just noise. So the system seems to be tuned for something closer to surprise than to beauty alone, which is part of why the chill so often arrives the first time you hear a song, sharp and unmistakable, and only ever as a faint echo of itself after that. There's a name for the machinery underneath that fading. A music researcher named David Huron spent a career making one radical case. Almost all of music's emotional power comes from expectation. Your brain does not passively receive a song. It runs ahead of it, guessing the next note a half-second before it arrives, quietly betting on what comes next. Most of the time, it guesses right, and you feel nothing at all. The chill lives in the miss, a chord that resolves somewhere you didn't see coming, a beat that lands late, a voice that keeps climbing past the point you assumed it would stop. That gap between what your brain wagered and what the music actually did is the exact spot the reward fires, which is why a song can only ambush you like that once, and why every listen after is a little quieter. Which raises the real question sitting underneath all of this. Why would evolution build something this specific, this costly, into a brain at all? Every other trigger for this level of reward has an obvious payoff you can trace with one hand. Food keeps you alive. Warmth keeps you alive. A mate keeps your genes alive. Music does none of that. It doesn't feed you. It doesn't keep you warm. Losing yourself inside a song can even make you less alert to a real threat creeping up behind you, which is exactly the kind of trade-off evolution is supposed to punish, not reward. And yet the reaction persists across culture after culture, era after era, strong enough that composers and producers have learned to engineer it on purpose. Key changes get placed deliberately, usually a whole step up, right when a song needs to feel like it's climbing towards something. Choruses get built to drop out to almost nothing. One voice, maybe silence, then crash back in with the full weight of the band a half second later than your body expects. Vocalists are coached to push a note just past comfortable range on purpose, because producers already know that exact edge of strain is what reaches into the old alarm and pulls the trigger. Ask around a recording studio, and you'll hear the same test applied to an unfinished song over and over. Not whether it sounds good, whether it gives anyone in the room actual goosebumps. If it doesn't, the song isn't done yet. Long before any of that production existed, something cruder was already doing the same job. Researchers studying lullabies across dozens of cultures have found that the melodies adults use to soothe a crying infant tend to share strikingly similar shapes. Slow, simple, repetitive, instantly recognizable as soothing even to listeners from a completely unfamiliar culture who don't understand a single word being sung. Somewhere behind almost every song built to give you chills is someone who understood a caregiving reflex from 100,000 years ago well enough to aim it on purpose, whether they knew the science or not. Maybe that isn't a flaw in the design. Maybe connection was always the actual point. Long before spoken language existed, the ability to signal distress, comfort, and belonging through sound may have been one of the only tools your ancestors had to hold a group together in the dark. A parent humming to a crying infant. A call answered across a camp at night by someone who heard it and came anyway. The chill running down your arms today at a wedding in a car alone, with headphones on in a room full of people who have no idea what just happened to you, might be a direct descendant of that first sound, still functioning exactly as intended, still doing the one job it was ever built to do. So the next time that one song comes on, and the note hits, and the hair rises on your arms without asking permission, you'll know what's actually happening underneath it. That was never just a good song. That was a 100,000-year-old alarm built to save a crying child, mistaking a chorus for the sound of someone you love.